So Minecraft Java Edition currently has 63 biomes, and in this video I'm going to attempt to rebuild every single one. Even the void. But instead of putting them in these little exhibits like everyone and their grandma has seen before, I'm going to build a megabase in the middle of the ocean with every biome and structure in the game. Because that's definitely the best way to spend the next 3 weeks of my life. Okay, I'm going to break this project up into 3 phases. In phase 1, I'll need to pick a spot to build this monstrosity and prepare the area for construction. And I have just the spot in mind. Now you're probably wondering what makes this spot so special. Well, I want to have an end portal directly in the center of all the biomes. And if I just dig over here, bingo. It's almost like I planned this. And if you look closely, you'll see that this spot also contains an ocean. The ocean is essential because I think it will look cool in the thumbnail. And that's it really. Now that I've got the spot picked out, it's time to mark out the corners. And now all the water within the square needs to go. The good news is Ilmango has a design for water removers that will make this process infinitely easier. The bad news, in order to drain the most water possible, the ocean floor needs to be flat, which it very much is not. So it's time for some scuba mining. And for the sake of not needing to repair my tools every 10 minutes, I'm going to... These things should last me forever though, as long as I don't break any. That's everything I need, so let's get started. And that's 25% of the square flattened. This is gonna take a while. And that's the entire ocean floor flattened down to Y45. Now I can finally start draining the water. To do that, I'm going to need some materials, starting with slime, leaves, sand, and ominous banners. Huh? You'll see why in a minute. And with all that collected, it's time to build. The walls of sand and leaves I'm placing now are called bumpers, or at least that's what I'm calling them. They'll give the water removers something to bounce off of. And speaking of water removers... Now, technically I could just start activating these one by one, but I think it will look cooler if they all move together as one unit. That's where these banners come in. If I place the first one down on this observer, and then connect the rest of the banners to it, remove these chests, and then break the first banner, it activates all of them at once. That was the easiest 800k blocks of water I've ever removed. So we're almost ready to start making this hole deeper. But we've got a bit of a situation down there. All that leftover water needs to go, and as you saw, this place turns into a mob farm at night. I'm going to tackle the water problem first, but first... No, that sounds stupid. Firstly, I want to outline the circle that we're going to be building in. Perfect. Now the water. How many sponges? Okay, yeah, that's not gonna work. That I can work with. I'm sure you guys have seen sponges work before, so I'll just... Boom. Water gone. And for my next trick, I'm gonna make these mobs gone too with a super simple mob switch by ENX04. That should be enough silverfish, so as long as this chunk loader is running, we should have a functioning mob switch. Okay, it worked. That's going to make this next part a lot easier. So we're almost finished with phase 1, but if I was to start building now, the mountain biomes would be about 15 blocks tall. And I'd like to shoot for at least 30 blocks, so I've got a bit of mining ahead of me. I started by removing as much sand, dirt, and gravel I could find, so it wouldn't get in my way while mining. Kind of like my cat just did. And then I got to mining, using some allays to help collect the blocks, but it quickly became clear that trying to keep the blocks was going to make this take way too long. So I ditched that idea and focused on mining as fast as I could. But even that wasn't enough. It was at this point where I started digging tunnels and filling them with TNT I made using gunpowder I got from my raid farm. And this is when I started seeing some real progress. With just a few layers left, I decided to go for one final massive explosion. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Not even the nightmare I witnessed back on day 21.
Why are you jumping on the bed?
No, this was far worse. The goal of this phase is to place down all of the concrete and get everything ready to start building the biomes. To place down all the concrete, we must first obtain it. Now to convert it. That should be enough for now. Alright, time to place some blocks. And there we go. That's kind of trippy looking. So if you've watched one of my videos before, you know I like pain. And what's more painful than spending 3 hours placing a giant cylinder of white concrete? Spending a few more hours making that cylinder 2 blocks thick because I think it'll look better in the thumbnail. That wasn't so bad. For the floor, I placed 2 mini HUD holograms as a reference. The brown circle is where the Mushroom Island is going to be. And the blue one is where the ocean biomes are going to start. Now I just need to dig a trench for the oceans and coat everything in a layer of concrete. Filling in the rest should be easy since it's flat, but I want to set something up that will save me some time later. The mob switch I built earlier is great for temporarily removing mobs, but every time I quit the game I have to fly 1,000 blocks to turn it back on. So to fix that, I want to build a mob switch right in the center of the biome so that the whole thing is mob proof at all times. Okay, I've hollowed out the area under the end portal for the mob switch, and now I need to kidnap a few villagers and trap them here. So... Nice. Now I can take them through the nether. And right over here, into the mob switch room. Cure them, place down a ton of beds, swap the gray beds for pink beds because they're just better, and feed them so they can replicate. It appears I've made a cat farm. Okay, I'm gonna try my best not to kill them this time. Now I can proceed with the floor. Awesome, so everything within the walls is ready for phase 2, but I can't just leave the outside looking like that. It's gross. And after several hours filling in the water, removing the bumpers, adding sand to the bottom, and planting tons of kelp, it still looks pretty bad. But you can't see it from the inside anyway, so I can't be bothered. During that, I also worked on the mob switch a little, turning all the villagers into cartographers and locking in their trades by buying maps. So now if I just get this guy... Nope. Alright, that's exactly how I wanted that to go. And while that zombie is having the time of his life, I'll explain what exactly this contraption does. Since I traded with all the villagers, they can't despawn, even once they've been zombified and are counting towards the mob cap, which means the whole area will be spawn-proof as long as I'm within 128 blocks of them. Pretty cool. So with the mob switch done, the inside of the walls finished and the outside ready, I guess that means it's time. Alright, this is where it all comes together, I hope. Otherwise, I just spent 60 hours building a bowl. So here's the plan. I'm going to divide this circle into 8 sections. Each section will contain biomes of a similar type. The first is going to include the temperate biomes, and what better way to start it off than the plains biome. For that, I'm going to need some grass. Lots and lots of grass. With that collected, I'll start with the shoreline, mixing grass and sand to mix it up. I want the biomes to gradually get higher the closer they get to the wall. That way the mountains can reach the whole way to the top and cover up all the concrete. And if I just fill that in, I can start adding detail and our first mini structure. So the left half here is going to be the sunflower plains. And on the right, I want to add a mini village to the regular plains. That actually looks really good. Okay, now as much as I'd love to show every block I'm placing, if I spend a minute on each biome, like I did with the plains, we're going to be here for another 61 minutes. So it's time to start picking up the pace. The next 2 biomes behind the plains are going to be the forest and birch forest. Behind those is the flower forest and the tall birch forest. While working on those, I had to get more grass and decided to relocate this ruined nether portal to our flower forest. So that's one more structure completed. And to get the tall birch trees, I grew birch saplings on pillars of birchwood, which was pretty big brain if you ask me. With those 6 biomes complete, it was time to do the mountains for this section, which were the meadow and stony peaks. And I was severely underprepared for how draining building custom mountains is. Like, the mountains for this section took 3 hours alone. On the stony peaks side, I added a dungeon as our third structure for the section, using gilded blackstone as a fake spawner and added some ores around for variation. While I'm waiting for that grass to grow, I think it would be cool to add a waterfall going down the stony peaks and through the birch forest, forming our river biome. And I'll transition it into the frozen river biome in section 2. To finish off section 1, I added flowers to the meadow biome and then began working on our first ocean, which is the regular ocean biome. Quick disclaimer, some oceans have a deep variant, which is kind of hard to represent when you're making everything mini. So I'm considering the deepest point the deep ocean and the less deep parts the regular ocean. I'm also realizing now that I lied. There's still one more mini structure for this section, which I need a sea lantern for. Now that's what I would call monumental success. So section 2, which I guess I gave away with the frozen river thing. This section is going to contain all the snowy biomes, starting things off with the soon-to-be snowy beach and the not-yet snowy plains. And then the frozen ocean, which is where one of our structures will be. And I'm out of ice. According to the wiki, an iceberg is considered a structure-like feature, so don't you just love when you're trying to record a voiceover and your dog keeps barking constantly? According to the wiki, an iceberg is considered a structure-like feature, so we're including those too. I can't build the iceberg without snow though, so I'm gonna need some help. And I have just the guy for the job. With the help of my new friend, I spread snow across the entire snowy beach and the snowy plains, and farmed up the snow blocks I needed for the iceberg. It's a bit big, I think, but so are icebergs, so I'll leave it be. Next up, I finished the frozen river I mentioned earlier, connecting it to the frozen ocean, and decided to lay out the rest of the terrain to get that part over with. But then something terrible happened. What I lost that day could never be replaced. Until the next day, when Snowbird 2 arrived. With the section mostly covered in snow, it was time to begin splitting up the biomes. On the left side, behind the snowy plains, I added the snowy taiga. And on the right, the ice spikes biome, which was an interesting one to build. It turned out pretty good, but I ended up giving it a bit of an upgrade later on. From there, I worked my way up the mountain, adding a grove biome, which is basically a snowy mountain with trees. And to the right of that is the snowy slopes, which is like a snowy mountain without trees. I then added ice to the left half of the mountain to make the frozen peaks biome, and on the right I added snow on the stone for the jagged peaks. And that's it. Wait, was that a... Oh yeah, I added a ravine with a deep dark biome and a mini ancient city. For section 3 we have the end biomes, and this one ended up being one of my favorites. I didn't even mean to. The end is the only dimension that doesn't have naturally generating liquid, so it wouldn't make sense to add an ocean biome in this section. Instead, I wanted to mimic the void, which just so happens to be a biome. Now, realistically, I couldn't build the void because it's literally nothing. But what I could do is recreate a fog effect with black glass to make the pit look endless. So I went back to my starter village and farmed up some of the materials. And while I was at it, decided to collect all the endstone and chorus fruit I was going to need too. With the resources gathered, I had everything I needed to start building, and began lining the edge of the snow biome and the whole back wall with a layer of black concrete. From there, I started working on the void, first adding the small end islands biome, and then creating the end barrens, which is basically like the edge of an end island. With those complete, I added all the black stained glass and completed the fog effect, which makes for a fairly convincing void. And then it was time to work on the remaining 3 end biomes. So I filled in all the endstone, trying my best to replicate the terrain of the end. And it was time to get creative. The end isn't exactly all that detailed, so it was important that I captured its most distinct features. In the back left, I wanted to build the end, which sounds like a dumb joke, but that's literally the name of the biome. It's basically the main end island, so I wanted to build many obsidian pillars surrounding the end podium. I used deep slate for the podium since it's the closest thing I could get to bedrock, and then used concrete to figure out the spacing for the obsidian pillars, which turned out pretty good, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. So after a quick trip to the nether, I was able to craft enough end crystals to top off all the pillars. And I even added some iron bars to 2 of them, which brought the whole thing together. After that, I noticed the rest of the end was looking quite empty, so I planted a bunch of chorus flowers in the Midlands biome and in what would soon be the Highlands biome. So to finish up the Highlands biome, I'm going to build a mini end city. But first, I need to pop some chorus fruit. Just a quick stop at the super smelter. There we go. Time to build that end city. As it's being built, I want to give a big thanks to Blocky Bryson. There were a few different tutorials for mini structures, but I liked his the most. This end city and the jungle temple that you'll see later were based off his tutorials. Okay, that looks really good, but the problem is you can't really see it. These chorus fruit plants are way too tall, so enjoy 10 seconds of chorus fruit ASMR. And time for the grand reveal. Yeah, that looks way better. And I guess that means it's time for the next section, which is going to be the swampy section. So I went on an adventure gathering all the blocks I'd need for the swamps. And then got to work, laying out the shallow swamp water and giving it a mix of dirt and clay. After a quick reminder that I'm not Dream, I scattered a bunch of lily pads throughout the water and decided to tackle a reoccurring problem with this build. You see, blocks like grass and leaves have different shades depending on what biome they're in, but since this entire base is built in the ocean, the grass and leaves don't care that I need them to be dark to make a swamp. In this case, I can't do anything about the grass, but for the swamp trees, I tried using oak logs with birch leaves to make them darker, which worked surprisingly well. And while the grass was growing, I added a mini witch hut too. And then placed the mud for the mangrove swamp. From there, I began adding the mangrove trees, which were kind of a mess to be honest. It took some finagling to get the spacing right, but once I did, I started filling in the extra space with dead bushes, grass, and swamp flowers. I decided to place the dark oak biome with the swamps, but I had to get creative since I didn't have much space left. I built a plateau reaching all the way up to the top, got a bunch of saplings, tried my best with the mini woodland mansion, and filled in all the dark oak trees. And then it was time for the second cave biome. I went with the dripstone caves here, carving a hole in the mountainside and building the cave out of stone before raiding a real dripstone cave for the materials to decorate it. And I'm quite happy with the result. The last part of this biome is invisible, at least from the surface. Fossils have a chance to spawn in swamp biomes, but they only spawn underground. I guess I'll leave one block exposed because why not? And that's 4 out of the 8 sections complete. On to section 5, starting with the ocean as usual. If you're wondering why one side is stone, it's because the next biome is going to be the stony shores. This is a cold ocean, so basically a regular ocean, but we pretend it's colder.
Shiver my timbers!
From there, I finished the stony shores by adding stone to the shores. Then I set off to grab the rest of the blocks I'd need. With the blocks in stock, I began working on the ocean ruins, which I shamelessly stole from a neighboring ocean. And then placed the next 2 biomes. My plan was to have the old growth spruce on the left and the regular taiga on the right. Now the only thing that makes the 2 old growth taigas different from each other are the tree types, which I can't control. So I spent a stupid amount of time growing and chopping down trees to get the specific types. Then I finished the regular taiga, before getting a sign from the universe that I've been spending way too long on each project because this is the second build in a row I've had a skeleton trap spawn. Anyways, I lined up the framework for the remaining biomes and started filling them in. I added the giant pines behind the spruce, then the windswept gravelly hills, followed by the windswept forest and windswept hills, completing the section. One thing I forgot to mention is that these mossy boulders are considered structure-like, so we can check those off. And there is another structure for this section, but I forgot about it until the very end of the video. So yeah. This is when I decided to go back and revamp the ice spikes biome. The extra space at the back was bothering me, so I filled it in with a few more spikes. Yeah, that's much better. Now the jungle section, starting with the warm ocean, which I'm both excited and intimidated to build. then the beach, and the entire landscape so I could get that part over with. But before I could do much with the jungle, I had to spend an eternity gathering jungle saplings, because they have half the drop rate of all the other saplings. With the saplings finally gathered, I built the sparse jungle, and then the regular jungle, with a mini jungle temple. On the left half, I used giant taiga trees to spread podzol for the bamboo forest, and then noticed a neighboring jungle island had bushes on the hillsides, so I replicated those on my own mountains, which, to be clear, don't really count as a biome. I just needed to cover up the concrete. I buried my berry under the beach, checking buried treasure off the list, and then started working on the lush cave. And every lush cave needs its very own azalea tree. From there, it was just a matter of terraforming a cave and lushifying it. That's the lush cave done, but just like the end city, you can't see it. So I'm going to have to trim down each stalk and place string on top, which I'm sure won't be tedious at all. Okay. Well, there's string above all these bamboo stalks now, but I have to cut them down so the tops will regrow with leaves. Forest fruit ASMR and bamboo ASMR in one video. And now things are about to get spicy.
Why is it spicy?
Because it's time for the nether section. So first up is the lava lake. It's not a biome, but there aren't oceans in the nether. Unless you're Kalani, I guess. And here's a quick summary of how the next hour and a half went. I feel like this shouldn't be a thing. That's good enough. I'm going to fill it in with blocks anyways. Like so. And I want to just get all the block collecting over with now. So that's the basic layout for the Nether Wastes and the Soul Sand Valley. Now I just need to go through and add some details, like magma blocks, gravel, one of those basalt pillar things, another one here maybe, yep, another fossil, which is one of our structures. There we go. A clump of glowstone. And in this gap I have here, I want to place the mini bastion. This is the type I chose as a reference. It probably has a name, but I don't know it. But here's my replica. Not too shabby. For the next two biomes, we have the Crimson Forest and the Warped Forest. For these, it was really just a matter of using bone meal on everything. Wait, why is this one so tall? It's taller than the jungle trees. And the last biome for the Nether is the Basalt Delta, which ended up taking 6 or 7 hours to finish. I lost count. I used so much basalt that I had to make a makeshift farm for it, which I threw together in a few minutes. And from there, it was really just a matter of grinding it out. Despite nearly going insane while building it, this was probably my favorite biome of the entire megabase. When the terraforming was finished, I needed to add a background in front of the white concrete. The Basalt Delta has a kind of grayish purpley color for the air, I guess? So I tried using cyan terracotta to replicate it.
Whoa, hey.
which ended up looking kinda meh. But then I realized light blue terracotta actually looks light purple. So I tore it all down and replaced it with the good stuff. After dealing with some surprise guests, the only thing left was the nether fortress, so I took a quick trip to my own fortress to try to figure out how to build one. And these guests just wouldn't leave me alone. When I was ready, I went back and got to work. I wanted to have it coming out of the basalt delta and poking into the warped forest a little, which worked out quite well. There's even a mini blaze spawner. And it's time for the next section, starting with the lukewarm ocean, which will be home to our final underwater structure, the shipwreck. Now, I'd admit that I stole this from another ocean, but I prefer to call it relocating. I relocated it. Just like the ocean, the rest of these biomes are of the warm variety. I laid out the land for the first 4 biomes and got to detailing them, adding cacti, a desert well, and a desert temple to the desert. For the savanna, I ran into the same issue that I had earlier. Other than acacia trees, the savanna's only discernible feature is its dead-looking grass, which I can't replicate because I'm in an ocean biome. So the next best solution was using path blocks to mimic the color of the savanna. Of course, this meant I couldn't place grass there, so I made up for it by using patches of coarse dirt to plant all the foliage, which I think looks pretty good. The next 2 biomes are a bit wacky. Before I could start though, I went on a quick trip with my cat to collect all the natural spawning terracottas. Got the red sand, and got started. That's the eroded badlands done, and the windswept savanna, which still needs some work, but I want to get started on the mountains, which are going to be the savanna plateau, wooded badlands, and regular badlands. Now, the problem with using path blocks is that it leaves these little gaps which I have to fill across this entire mountain. Now for the details, and time to add the wood to the wooded badlands, using birch leaves again for that darker look. For the structures, I'm going to add the pillager outpost right here. And then a mine shaft over in the badlands. With a fake cave spider spawner, and some cobwebs from this abandoned village to finish it. And boom. The entire outer area of the megabase complete. Now, as much as I'd love to start the final biome, I've got to take care of that structure I missed earlier in the taiga biomes. I'll just need some of these, a few shards, that gives that section a little pizzazz, a little zest, a little panache?
Panache.
Yeah, panache. Now I'll just clean up my mess, grab some mycelium, and some of these on the way. I don't have a silk touch shovel. And now the mushrooms. That's the mushroom island complete, but there's still one more structure left, hence this hole. I'm going to build a stronghold themed gateway here. And yeah, you can very much hear the mob switch from up here. So here it is. Every single biome and structure in Minecraft.